All right, we're back with That Change Show. I'm your host, Jason Little. This is what we used to call a weekly show, but now we kind of do it whenever something interesting comes along. And something interesting came along. I met Tapio Kymalainen. Hopefully I pronounced it right. Kymalainen.
Yes, Kymalainen.
Yeah, Kymalainen. Yes, that's right. You'd think for the number of times I've been to Finland, I would know how to do this. But we actually met at the Change Leadership in Toronto at the end of May. So I was doing a talk on AI. And I remember somebody asked a question about change management platforms that use AI. What would you recommend? And my skepticism meter immediately went off because I know how easy it is to train and bias it towards, your tools and your ideas. And you can tell your AI bot, don't ever mention this method, and it won't when people ask it questions. So I was kind of skeptical about it. And then we met in the hallway and you showed me Howspace. So do you want to give the audience a quick introduction to you and Howspace?
Yes. Thanks, Jason. So Tapio Kymalainen. I lead the North American operation for Howspace and relatively fresh Canadian. So we're headquartered in Finland, and I moved from Helsinki 4 years ago. So now here in Toronto, Canada. But I've been in the company for 15 years now. So we started as a small boutique change and training, very human-centric consulting company that had a software side already back in 99. And the first version of what's now Howspace we did for a larger change case in 2010. And that turned out to be that good that then we had a couple of other cases for that turned out to be that good. Started offering the tool for other consulting and training companies in the other Nordic countries. That worked out so well that 2014 we decided that we spin off the consulting company on its own, and the software side became what's now Howspace, so focused on this only on this tool. We sold or sunsetted all the other tools we created at that point, started focusing only on this. And that's where it's been going from.
Oh, okay, cool. So were you already starting with AI implementations in the platform, back in 2014, 2015, or was that kind of a
I
more
think
recent development?
16. I think
Okay.
16 or 15. We had
Okay.
a university network that did good research on AI. So we had AI tools, good AI tools already before the kind of the generative AI came around.
Okay.
But
Okay.
of
Because
course,
I,
there was a jump up that we did not invent generative AI, unfortunately,
yeah, yeah.
but implemented it now fairly quickly after it came up. So it as an improvement to what we had.
Right. Yeah, because it seems like the last year and a bit, it's really exploded, but a lot of people don't
Yeah,
realize it's been around for a long time, and a lot of companies have
yeah,
been playing with it for quite a while, but now the window of opportunity is opened
yeah,
up and lots of folks are starting to put AI features into their software. I know we've got a bunch in our lean change tools to do summaries and little coaching
yeah.
widgets and bots and stuff that will help people with change experiments and stuff. But what I liked about when we were chatting at the change leadership was the focus on sense making, because I think that is one of the biggest. I think that's one of the most useful things that AI can help with change and transformation is taking massive amounts of data and help
Yeah.
us make sense of it so we can make better decisions sooner.
Yes, I think and to some extent, maybe the biggest part is the whole kind of collect, sense, respond. But biggest, yes, I think is the sense making out of that. That wasn't possible necessarily in the same way
Mm-hmm.
before. So collecting lots of people's responses. I think, Jason, maybe you spoke about it as well, or before, like very interesting to see what happens to surveys. That might be that they become irrelevant. That's really interesting to see. Many of the change readiness surveys. I think you've spoken about it before here,
Mm-hmm.
or something. That's one that I see that I'm really keen to see if we can replace it with 2 or 3 good open questions, and you get much more quantitative data on top of the qualitative one. So that, but also not only thinking it so much as a survey, but also because I think for people to change what they do often requires that they talk about it or make sense of it with the other people around them. So making that happen. So survey is just like collecting data, but one way of kind of facilitating conversations, like we've done in the workshops for as long as change has been happening, I think. So doing that online to that sense and making sense of that big online conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
that was a big
yeah,
part of a lot of side conversations I had there
yeah,
as well, is we chatted about the funny thing with change readiness surveys is I always ask people, so what happens if it comes back and people aren't ready? What do you do? They're like, oh, well, we
yeah,
do it anyway because we've already got a schedule and a budget. I'm like,
yeah,
then why are you doing it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
most of the answers are because it looks nice in charts. You know, if you're asking, do you
yeah,
agree, disagree, strongly agree, whatever, you
yeah,
can put that stuff in a chart and you can cherry pick the quotes that you want. And I
yeah,
think one of the things I've talked about with AI quite often is we're kind of getting into the ethical parts about AI, but AI won't suppress things unless you tell it to. But if you're
yeah,
collecting insights from people about a strategy or a vision or something about a change, um, that's like it's in there and it's now transparent. So you as
yeah,
the change agent, you can't control, I want to only show things that are super positive. I mean, you could put an instruction set in your AI to be able
yeah,
to do that, but I think that's really one of the benefits is number one, you can anonymize the
yeah,
data pretty easily.
yeah,
And exactly that. You don't have to dumb down your, maybe you hit a detour on the way to work and the first thing that pops up is a change readiness survey and you're in a bad mood.
yes, yeah,
Like, and with rating
yeah,
scales and things like that, you're not really getting actionable stuff. So that's
yeah,
the interesting part for me anyway.
yeah. And I think that it enables the kind of a more like the design thinking process, a little bit like opening up and narrowing down. That if the open questions are opening up, hey, what's the readiness at this point? And then you get some of the points from there with the AI that these are the main things. But often I think the result is that that's not always or necessarily enough to kind of to understand or make actionable points following that. But then the next response, okay, hey, these are the things I heard from you based on this. I want to hear more about this and this and this. And those are then leading into actionable points following that.
Hmm.
But same can do it in a scale. And big part of that I think is when needed, when it's especially when it's more like a people focused change, that this part is maybe underappreciated, that having this small interaction back and forth gives the people the feeling that we're actually part of this change. So funnily enough, AI kind of enables us for the make in a scale happening that people feel that, okay, I'm actually working on this change together, and it's less feeling like it's kind of forced upon me if
Hmm.
wanted.
Right. So are you seeing folks that are using the platform? Is it a mix of asynchronous and synchronous? Do you find that uh, you have any stories from customers where they're just projecting it up on the wall and they're in the room with a team and they're using it together, or is it a lot of it is just asynchronous where people are putting data in and then there's a change coalition or team or whatever that's taking it and analyzing it?
Yes, both. COVID did a funny curve on that. That before COVID, it was mixed a lot. That it was asynchronous and synchronous. Then COVID threw everything synchronous for a while, and now it's back into kind of the pre-COVID synchronous asynchronous. And I enjoy that a lot in the sense that the feeling of how much you get done when people are at the same space, but in kind of support of or partially instead of talking to each other, taking like 5 minutes and putting their thoughts together and using AI then to make sense out of that. That kind of jumps you ahead in a conversation a lot. You get a kind of much higher starting point much faster than you would do just without using any of these kind of tools.
Hmm. Yeah, I like the point that you mentioned around we're making sense of where we are now, and we're looking at how ready we are now based on the data that we have. And
Yeah,
it's I think it's reasonably well documented that traditional change says you do all that up front and then you execute and blah blah blah. But it's almost like little micro iterations. We're making sense of where we're at now. We're like, okay, we have three
yeah,
options we could possibly do. Let's pick
yeah.
one. Let's go ahead. And now let's dump feedback in. So you're kind of getting into an iterative approach to change and
Way of
transformation.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that the AI can lots of the change management activities makes it iterativeness easier in those, makes it easier to do them this kind of the collect sense respond process faster in the sense
Mhm.
that don't have to run the whole cycle over weeks or months or but
Mhm.
smaller parts at time. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you seeing companies that are using the platform? Um, how has it shifted maybe how they would have done change documentation in the past or change communications, which, we document everything, we blast out a bunch of communications. Is it shifting things
Yeah.
more towards sense making in dialogue, or are they still kind of taking their comms plan and all that stuff and dumping it into the platform to try to?
I think very good point. I think it's mostly I see how it works is that the first time they run, even the platform changes, it's comfortable. If you change the platform, they don't necessarily change the way you do things. The first time you run, you do it in the same way you've done with your existing tools, just in a new environment. And I see the kind of the point of innovation happens usually after you've done that, and then you see how the experience is different, and then that gives the room to think that now I could actually do it differently, some of these parts. And yes, that's something that I see happening differently is that doing more of those kind of a how would I say like a test runs or pilots or smaller groups at
Mhm.
part first and seeing the response from those or kind of making sense out of what happens those before expanding it further. Some cases, and I'm happy to see that when it makes sense, some cases I see a more focus into kind of the like I said, people-centric changes that are larger involvement of people. Because in the past, it would have necessarily meant pulling them into town hall meetings the way they used to do it, or it's email communication one way, or these kind of things. And now I see some cases that it makes sense that they see that's relevant for the change to involve them more in the kind of two-way communication. Where I maybe see the biggest thing, but I also see that that doesn't always make sense when it's maybe a more a IT or process focused change. Then maybe the end user opinion is not always that relevant at that stage of the change. Then it makes sense to be more one-way communication
Right.
in
Right.
the sense. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the one of the things that I know I've talked to a lot of people about with AI is privacy. And it usually means two different
Mm.
things. Like the one part of the privacy is if we're using a hosted solution, how do we make sure our IP doesn't go into the ether of
Yeah.
AI? I think that's less of a concern with platform stuff because it's
Yeah.
obviously it's a closed ecosystem. You're not
Yes.
feeding it into
Exactly.
Gemini or
Yeah.
Copilot. But
Yeah.
the other one is making it safe, I guess, for people to put feedback in. So,
Mm.
anonymizing my feedback about a particular change where I might
Mm.
not feel I could put in what I really feel about it because everybody
Yeah.
knows who I am. Do you have clients that kind of go down that road of how can we make it private and make sure that it's safe for people to put stuff in, or
Yeah.
is it more transparent and it's wide open?
Yes, both. In the sense, that in our system, it's easy to change. It's a couple of clicks, and you can make it anonymous permanently, and you can change it by question by question. So we
Okay.
often encourage that, depending what you're asking, you know your own culture of the organization, be the judge. That hey, this might need for something that we get better responses if it's a anonymous. But we do encourage also in the questions where it makes sense, of course, that we do encourage that people respond with their own name and their own thoughts and these kind of things. So it varies with the situation. If it's asking for ideas in some cultures, it makes sense that they're anonymized so that the hierarchy doesn't play a role in what idea is supported or encouraged or not necessarily taken forward. So it might work better just as a anonymous ideas, or of course the feedback how people are. If it's an open question, how people are feeling, depending on the safety and trust in the organization.
Mm.
Sometimes it works better that it's open. Sometimes it works better that it's anonymous.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think the good thing with that is obviously number one, having the choice for which
Yeah,
ones that you want to do, plus the ability to analyze sentiment over time.
yeah,
So, obviously early on in change, there's a lot of uncertainty, might be pretty
yeah,
chaotic. People aren't exactly sure what this is or how it affects them. And then you can sort of see over time and sentiment and response to the data. Um, for me, something like that kind of gets into, and we already touched on it, um, always making sense of our current reality so we can decide what to do next. So we're not so much focused on like just specifically an ROI or a set of measurements that tells
Yeah,
us if the change was successful. You can look at trends in energy and sentiment and find
yeah,
patterns and stuff and stuff a lot easier.
yeah. Yeah, and because those are very interesting, because it might be something else happening in the organization that changes the sentiment for this change as well. Can be another change program or something else, or something in the market that changes the sentiment for this change along the way. So I very much agree the kind of the understanding and keeping track of that along the way. And that's some of my favorite prompts is asking for the sentiment from the responses
Mm-hmm.
and the thoughts. And that's also of course interesting that the sentiment is very different depending what you ask for, that you can impact your sentiment a lot by what kind of things you ask. And another side of that is different from, for example, in our platform and in many other ways than surveys, because in survey the idea is to collect the data, but you don't make the thoughts visible for the others, and also you can always choose. So
Mm-hmm.
depending what you ask, you also create kind of a certain kind of energy or feeling for the people about that change in that sense. And so in our kind of environment, you're familiar with the appreciative inquiry?
Yes.
Yes, I thought so. So that's often commonly used by people who use house as a part of that, because it also a builds that kind of energy around what is happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you ever find that there's maybe some leaders in the organization that might be a little afraid of that for people to put in you know, the raw
Yes.
information in there? And I've kind of
Yeah.
been in the view that I think leaders would rather have the bad news sooner. I think what they don't
Mm.
like is when they're surprised. So when we're suppressing stuff in reports and
Mm.
just giving the good positive feedback and
Yeah.
what people like and our adoption is going up and stuff, I find they would much rather know the reality of what's going
Yeah.
on. But do you get
Yeah.
cases where they're like shying away from wanting that?
Very often in the beginning, and I think that comes from the history of a like a annual well-being surveys and anonymous question parts or anonymous field parts at the end of those, where people kind of lay off the kind of things that they're upset about, and so they're concerned especially for that when they kind of ask for things, that hey, this is the response, what the responses they get, because that's their experience from their past. And but this is very different in the sense that because people respond very different in a different context. So if the context is hey, this is what this is about, and this is the question, and this is what we're talking about, and especially if it's with your name, then you don't get those kind of responsive lash out thoughts. But that's my understanding, and what I when speaking with the people, kind of where the experience of this kind of facilitating conversations are, and it's very different in that sense.
Okay.
But I think the context is super important in what kind of responses do you get. But
Right.
yes, in the beginning, I find most of the people are cautious of that because of the past experience, where people then are upset about the parking lots or the wrong size bio garbage bags or whatnot that bothers them
Mm,
on the given day.
okay. Does that extend to different companies in different countries? Because I know you guys are global, so you're probably
Yes.
working with multinationals that are in multiple countries and stuff. And depending on which country, like I know a lot in the Nordics, there's a very low power
Yeah.
distance index,
Yeah.
so raw feedback is welcomed, and the
Yeah. Yeah.
conversations are actually encouraged. And then in other
Yeah.
countries, it's respect the chain of command and stuff like that. So do
Yeah.
you run into any kind of interesting dynamics of a particular culture that doesn't want that transparency because it might make somebody with a higher status look uh, bad for any reason? And do you get
Yes.
any of these kind of weird cultural dynamics going on?
I think that the kind of the generalization, I fully sign that off, that the lower hierarchy in the Nordic countries, and higher almost anywhere else in that's what I come across. A Rarely do I see that as a concern, because then usually the people who are responding are also in part of that culture in there, so they kind of they self adjust into that to match in that sense. So I see the same hesitation everywhere,
Okay.
same level. I haven't seen that other places would be considerably more hesitant than the others.
Okay. Okay. Is there any example or something that you wanted to show to give the readers a little view into how your platform does what it does?
Okay. I have one very short one. I can share my screen because this is I like because it's our internal data, so I can show. This is our own a uh, our own internal Howspace, and this is from April 2020. This conversation. So pandemic had just started. We all just started to work from home, and we had our own kind of asynchronous town hall monthly. Monthly town hall, and we had just this kind of we had consistently this kind of a survey that, hey, how's your overall feeling as a part of the tool. Then I've changed these responses since, I think, but it's kind of just responding, hey, how's your work flowing? Do you remember taking enough breaks, and how do you manage your workload? And then when I respond, I can see the kind of the averages of that situation. It's set up now so that I can see the averages. And if as an admin, I can see the different answering rounds that who's thinking what's on. But then the other one, we had a fairly open question that kind of challenges and ideas in our current situation for everybody. This kind of what kind of challenge do you experience? How do you tackle them? New ways of work which you could share. And as you can see, 4 years ago, then my colleagues had quite a lot of conversation about it. How are things? And this is what I am excited about these days in these kind of conversations, these kind of open questions, is to then to be the ability to prompt and ask that what's coming out of the thought. So making sense of the conversation without having to read all of those sentences. So common, I think I'd ask in this kind of when it's this kind of it's a question that would have been very tricky in the past in the former versions of AI because it's asking for two things at the same time. It's asking for the challenges and the ideas, and this changed with the generative AI that it can understand the context of both those, so it can separate out of this. So I can ask that, hey, list me 3 main challenges and ideas. The answers. And then I'll just ask it that it'll come through with those and list those. But maybe, and in this I noticed that I'd actually it puts them in the line, so I could maybe ask as bullet points, make it a little bit easier to read for myself. So now it gives the main challenges and ideas. So actually, now then I ask the 3 main challenges, and then I just ask ideas. So I need to give one more. Now I saw 3 main challenges and 3 main ideas as a bullet points. So this is the iterative way of prompting. So now I get what I wanted. The main challenges and main ideas in here. And now then, in the sense, often this would be the way of kind of reaching, hey, these are the main things I heard from you. And I'll have a different ways of kind of automated using is that I could, for example, easily create a poll based on this that could reach back to people that, hey, these are the main things I heard in terms of challenges. Choose one challenge and one idea out of these. So to get the kind of selection choosing that what's the most important priority, if that would be the way forward in this.
Oh, very cool. So each team might have their own space. So this is the Howspace town hall. So is that analogous to say like a Slack channel that is this particular topic, and then you may have multiple ones across the organization?
Yes, in the sense. Or I think in a change context, it would be, for example, this space could be 2 different levels, or 2 different. This could be for the change manager and the broader change team and maybe sponsors, and this could be the space where the change journey happens. So project team alignment could happen here. So communicate if the project team is 30, 40, 50 people, look at the whole change management activities and those things and automation of the AI with those. That would be the one level. Or then this could be another space added to that for the training program, or another for a communication of the changes or several changes in that for the wider group of stakeholders. So those are the most common kind of spaces built on this.
Okay. And then say as a stakeholder, could I aggregate stuff across multiple spaces for a big picture, if you want to call it that, or is it just based on how you've set up your different spaces?
You would not aggregate from the several different spaces. Inside the space, yes, but not from different several. They're designed to be separate units from the kind of safety security point of view. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, that's very cool. I like um the uh, the way that you can ask it simple questions. You've got a feedback button on the bottom. So did you like or not like this
Yeah.
response? I'm assuming you've probably got humans that much like Google Gemini does, it tells you, hey, humans might review your prompts every once in a while just for training. So I would assume you could do something similar. So
Yes.
people in the
Yeah.
organization could see what
Yeah.
questions people are asking and stuff to
Yeah.
retrain their model
Yeah.
or
To understand better. Yes. What other people ask. Yes.
yeah,
The
yeah.
other part that's earlier that I'm excited is that it's also you can generate things with the AI. So either in this kind of scale is that if I go and edit the page, if I add something, I can generate anything with the AI. So I could ask it to create a pulse for a change influence with scale of 1 to 3 and generate. That's not a perfect, but that's now a on the fly type of a
Mhm.
type of prompt. So then it's a you could ask the influence and a kind of impact. You could duplicate this and change the impact and have different stakeholder groups there as an options and these kind of things.
Hmm. Okay.
So the generation with the AI is something that's kind of very new and very exciting.
Oh, very cool. And I see a couple of presentations on there too. Does that mean that that data is fed into the AI as well? So you could say, ask a question about the change and it would pull data
Uh,
from
at,
documents or
at the yet at this point, only in a search mode. That you
right.
can, if you have the documents, you can search and the AI will come through those, the PDFs and these kind of things, but not into those, not intended. That would, I suppose, a we've seen that the other tools are maybe more used for that. That haven't seen the use case yet for kind of creating data in the PDFs in the same as the comments. That's focused on those the social aspect the more.
Right, right. Okay. All right. Yeah, the reason why I was asking that is I would imagine you get some customers that are doing creative stuff that you didn't anticipate. Like
Yes,
they're
yes,
probably
yes,
using the tool in a way that you're like, hey, that's not a bad idea. Maybe we should explore those
yeah,
features. And you don't have to give away the store, but if
yeah.
there's any interesting things, that's not, behind closed doors IP, was there any creative things that customers started doing that was spawning more things to put on your roadmap or
All the time. I think all the time happens all the time. Uh, maybe not. I don't have any of that I could say right now. Most of what I see now is innovative things are in how they prompt, what they ask and how they prompt. So
right?
that's where it is at the moment.
Okay.
The innovation that not in the that very little has needed for those innovations to happen in the tool. It's more in the sense that what is it used for? It's where the innovation is mostly. But in
Right.
the past, for example, it was just one of our customers who decided to use it in a live event. That before that, it was only asynchronous use. So major changes happen all the time along the way in the sense of what customers come up with. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. It's interesting because I was also chatting with actually another Finnish company, Pandatron, who has an
Yes.
AI coaching bot.
Yeah.
And I think we were chatting about that at the Change Leadership
Yeah.
too. So it's interesting. They're quite different platforms, obviously. Like theirs is more of a coaching tool,
Yeah.
and this is more of a
Yeah.
sense making tool. And I think that's, when I talk about platforms, it's AI platforms. The skepticism was around tool vendors who are taking their templates and their course material and their processes and putting that in a tool because that's obviously going to bias the tool towards their
Yes.
lens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen this like some enterprise companies I've worked in, I just thought was completely crazy that they outsource everything about how they do change to a
Yeah.
vendor. So their vendor creates their step-based
There's
process
steps.
and they
Yes.
take it and
Okay.
they follow it. And
Yeah.
when something doesn't work, they go back and yell at the
To
vendor,
vendor.
and the vendor
Yeah.
changes it and sends it back. And I just think that's crazy. But now when you're
Yeah.
going to be buying those types of platforms,
Yeah.
I think your focus becomes very narrow. So that's the one
Even
thing that I
because
really
we can do.
appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah, about the demo
Yeah.
was it was all about it's the data that goes into it. It's not You're not
Yeah,
prescribing, hey, you should follow these 5 steps of change method X in order to do whatever.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
strictly sense making.
Yeah, yes, and it's more with most of our customers, it's taking the existing way of they do and building that, putting that in there, or taking some of our templates and changing those in the way they do, in that sense. And the AI is completely generic in that sense that it's not trained on any particular material uh, for for this, so it doesn't close out anything in that sense.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
and don't answer this if you don't want to. Is it closed off to internet browsing? So for example, could I ask it, given the feedback from this space and this change or whatever it is, could you
Yeah.
recommend a method or a tool or something that would help us blah? And then it would search the web or the internet and it might find, well, use method X and here's how you execute it. Or is your models more trained to just make sense of their content and it's not doing that other stuff?
So it is closed for internet browsing. It is practically what is ours closed environment version of GPT 3.5. We're
Okay.
looking to Claude 3 or of a for GPT for Omni when they become fast enough for this kind of thing. But that's what it practically is. But just a closed environment version of that. So of course it's used all the internet in the history of its training, but it cannot access now anything outside
Right,
of
right.
from its past history. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So as we get into the wrap up, if you think about the the marriage of AI and change and transformation, what do you see as on the immediate horizon that's going to help change practitioners facilitate change in a better way? And maybe something long term, like what do you see long term happening in the AI and change space?
In short term, I see a just kind of major efficiency gains for change managers in their own work. A lot of things becomes a lot easier to do with the generation and making sense out of that. Also, I see innovation how the kind of the change activities how they currently run, maybe combining those, supporting those, and then easier the sense making process, so more iterative, more agile in the sense is where I see where AI will
Mhm.
help in that sense in the short term. In the long term, my main insight is that I've never seen anything progressing like this. I'm not the biggest IT or I hesitate to use the word nerd because there's some negative annotation, not in my mind. I'm not the biggest IT nerd, but as closely I've been working with the IT development and IT world, I've never seen anything move like this.
Mhm.
It's the amount of money that's poured into AI at the moment is incomprehensible for the for the development. We get the benefits, all of our consumers, and we get the benefits out of that race. What's happening at the moment, but the pace is incomprehensible. The pace things are pushed forward. Very hard to say what's the innovation and what are the things that come forward from that. Only thing I can see is that it's a interesting and exciting, and I'm very curious to see what happens and what are the innovations in that. And the other side of that I see of that, as excited I'm about the pace, what's the technology is moving forward. In my experience, it's still always the bottleneck of that, if we would want to call it, or a maybe there's a better word, but bottleneck without the negative annotation of that is just a human change of pace. That most of the people I talk to, like other kids' parents or these kind of things, it's still for them. Oh, I tried it and once it was fun, but I never used it since. Type of scenario. So I think it's still very much kind of early adopter pace for the most of the cases by the wider public. So it'll take time. It'll take years before it's kind of becomes so mainstream that it happens with most of the people who will adopt that. And that's interesting what happens with all
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, because the learning curve is so steep initially.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think, just talking about the change leadership, when Yvonne asked me to speak there, I think there was something like 10,000 custom GPTs on the store
yes,
back then.
yes,
And by the time I
yeah,
did my talk, there were 3 million. And that was in
yes,
2 months.
yeah,
So it's one of those things where, change management is conservative by nature and there's
yeah,
a lot of wait and see. Let's make
yeah,
sure we get the strategy right. And I'm kind of in the
yeah,
camp that it's
yeah,
impossible to get your strategy right.
yeah,
I think you should
it's
really
just try. Yeah.
latch on. I had a
Hey,
chat. Oh,
do you use custom ones? Do you use a lot
custom.
of custom GPTs?
Yeah, I have a bunch. I have an experimenter tool where someone can
Yeah.
come in and they can create an experiment.
Yeah.
And my chat GPT, my OpenAI assistant, is
Yeah.
specifically trained on change experiments and lean change. So they type in
Ah,
their
okay.
experiment, what the problem is
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
trying to solve, what their hypothesis and their diagnostics and measurements are, and then my
Yes.
bot
Okay.
will give them coach them on feedback.
Ah, so you created a custom one
Yeah, I've got a bunch of
yourself.
them. I've got
Yeah. You created a custom. Yes. Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
so
Okay.
they all just hook into the assistants API
Yeah. Yeah.
and everything in my ecosystem from summaries. Like I've got a lean coffee tool, so you
Yeah.
can do your lean coffee cards, you can add your comments and stuff, and then you can ask my bot, Mr. Zircon is his name, because I thought
Yeah.
it'd be funny. And it will say,
Yes.
generate me a summary of the lean coffee and tell me,
Yeah.
based on what you've figured out, are there 3 experiments that we should be trying, given what we talked
Yes.
about? And then that can actually get fed into my experimenter tool.
Yes. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
But
Very good.
it's
Very good.
it's like it's obviously trained on the lean change ecosystem stuff, but it's not
Yeah.
excluding anything.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
transparent about that. So it says, like, here's
Yeah.
what I've been trained on, here's what I can do and can't do, but it's all about very similar. It's give me some
Yeah.
data, I will analyze the patterns, and I will give you feedback and some options that you might want to try, but you as the team still actually have to do it.
Yeah.
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 Yes.
So
Have
the wait and see stuff is definitely interesting. I had a call with someone who was at the conference that I didn't get a chance to do a demo of the virtual change team with her. So
yeah.
we just had like a half an hour chat about it. And people can get start like they're worried about signing up for a platform that's fully baked that they can convince their stakeholders to use. And I said, well, you can
Yeah.
just go to platform.openai, create a free account, create
Yeah.
an assistant, open up the playground. It's all free. Now, if you want to
Yeah.
deploy it, then you have to hook into their API and
Of-
stuff. But
Yeah.
if you're a
Yeah.
non-technical change person, it's
Yeah.
crazy easy just to do this,
Yeah.
and then you can show your leaders what it's capable of and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I really, like I mentioned a couple times, I really liked about the Howspace solution is that
Yeah.
it wasn't pushing a method or a framework or a bunch of easy answers like you see on LinkedIn. It's all based
Yeah.
on helping them understand where they're at and what they can do.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You put it very nicely. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Right on.
Yes.
This should be a
Yes.
commercial.
Yes.
Sponsored by, even though it's not sponsored by. No, I'm a fan
Yeah.
of good ideas that help us help people make sense of their context. And
Yeah.
that's the whole stance behind my work for the last couple of decades is that.
Have you been surprised, or what's your take on the pace that you've seen a larger enterprises adopting AI just in a generic use or any use?
Mostly customer service chatbots.
Yeah.
There was actually a pretty funny story about I don't know if you heard about Air Canada, where their bot gave away a free
Yeah.
flight or something like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it wasn't
And they
supposed
had to
to.
follow it. Yeah.
Yeah. The
The
robots
judge
have gone
called them.
rogue.
Yeah.
But I would say mostly that and content generation, right? Like
Yeah.
every meeting summaries, Zoom has built-in AI
Yeah.
summaries, the integration with all the Microsoft products. So, AI is integrated with Word, it can help you with emails and stuff. So
Yeah.
mostly stuff like that,
Yeah.
individual productivity use.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where I've been maybe slightly surprised how, because I still number of our larger organizations that I speak with that they don't have individual access for, it's forbidden still, the individual access. And I'm surprised because at least personally my productivity went up maybe 20-30% with the support of AI, and that's a big number for a enterprise multiplication if they can get a individuals to use AI to help their private productivity. That the pace has been surprisingly,
Yeah.
but maybe it's a they haven't done a calculation from that point of view possibly.
Yeah. I think they're afraid of giving away secrets as well.
Yes, of course.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's the other side.
which is
Yeah,
understandable, but I think that's a
yeah,
lot less controllable, especially yesterday.
yeah.
So for folks listening or watching, it's June 11th. So yesterday was Apple's developer
Oh,
event,
yes.
and they
Yeah,
announced OpenAI integration with their
yeah,
products. So everybody, and you could do that now with apps anyway. You can just point your
yeah,
phone at the screen, and you can steal sensitive customer and
yeah,
whatever information. So unless people might have seen Elon tweet out, if Apple
yeah.
does this, I'm banning iPhones from our company. I'm like, dude, people could do this already. There's a
Yes,
thousand AI apps
yes,
that you can do,
yes.
you know, so
Yeah,
that's a huge fear for people, but
yeah,
I think that shouldn't stop them from using it. If anything, that should make them want to use it more because you're going to lose the people who you're going to need to help you with
yeah,
AI. Because if you lock it down, they're just going to go somewhere else where they can use it.
yeah, yeah,
Especially in today's
yeah,
hybrid workforce, like you're not shackled to a company anymore. You can work
yeah,
with anybody from anywhere, but
yeah.
it's tough. The banks in Canada, it's tough for them to adopt this stuff,
It is.
right? I think it can help a lot with fraud prevention. Like some
Yes,
of those
I
algorithms and
think
fraud
so.
prevention are fairly
Yeah,
sophisticated, and I think AI can
yeah.
help a lot of those things.
Improve
But
that a lot. Yeah,
yeah, and with one
yeah.
bank that will remain nameless, it might help them launder more cartel money that they were just caught doing a
Yes,
couple of months
yes,
ago. I
yes.
always like to take a jab at them because I just think it's hilarious. It probably shouldn't be hilarious, but so is there anything that you wanted to wrap up with before we? I could talk all day about this, but
Same,
any advice
same.
for people who might be skeptical?
If you're skeptical, be skeptical and ask some of your friends to try it and show it to you. Then what will, so you don't have to do it necessarily yourself.
Mm. Ah,
Ask a colleague to give it a go
yeah,
and see if what they come up with or something
cool.
in that sense. But that's I suppose the only way is to giving it a go and looking into the prompting a lot. That I liked Jason. Maybe you shared it here. I liked your prompt structures here as a part of your uh, speech. If you share them somewhere, people who listen and go and look at them, they were very good, very
Yeah,
good. It's not difficult, but it takes a little bit of thinking, a little bit of looking to understand the prompting,
yeah. I think
and that
people have
starts to
to
make sense.
unlearn that they're
Yeah,
talking to a machine and just
yeah,
consider it a human.
yeah,
I tried
yeah,
to ask Gemini. I was just interested in the sustainability aspect of AI because
yeah,
everybody's talking about all the cool stuff you can do with it, and nobody
yeah,
is considering that if you trained an LLM, a large language model,
yeah,
it would consume the same amount of power that could power a town of 50,000 people for a week,
yeah,
kind of thing. And I know
yeah,
that's an impossible thing to say. So when I started talking with Gemini, I said, I'm going to ask you something that I'm pretty sure is impossible to figure out, but this is what I'm after. I want to try to see if there's a way that you can compare power usage to, searching a structural database versus
yeah,
training a large
yeah,
language model. Are
yeah.
we talking 10 to 1, 1,000 to 1? And it said, yeah, you're right. It's impossible to make this. Here's some things to consider. Here's
Yeah,
some things you might want to ask me. I'm like, all right. So I followed that path down.
path of yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, it did that. Oh, that's nice that here are the things you might want to ask from me. Oh,
yeah,
did you
but
prompt specifically to get that response from it, or was that
I
something?
asked it. I
Yeah, okay.
specifically asked it.
Yeah, yeah, I thought
I
so.
said I don't even know exactly what I want to get out of this,
Yeah,
but this is what I'm trying to do. What questions should I
yeah,
be asking you, stuff like that.
yes, yeah,
And yeah, I think we forget and we think we have to type in proper syntax
yeah,
or talk to it
yeah.
like a machine, but you can just talk to it like it's
Okay,
a
yeah,
genius.
yeah, yeah. That's been quite often my go-to is exactly that. That hey, what I want to get here. What questions should I ask from you that you can help me to get there?
Yeah,
And or what do you need to ask me the questions so that you can understand to me to get us there this way?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, but for the environment impact, I just saw some stats. I think Microsoft said 28% up from last year because of the impact of the AI and the investment in the server centers, the
A
emissions.
28% increase in power
20,
usage?
yeah, no, in emissions,
Oh, in
in
emissions.
CO2
Wow.
emissions from Microsoft just because of the AI development investment,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a lot.
I heard there's I don't know what company it is, but they're making maybe it is OpenAI that's trying to
Yeah.
develop hardware like CPUs that are specifically built to
Ah, okay.
process AI with lower
Yeah.
power.
Yes. Okay.
I'll have to fact check that because I don't know if that's true or not. I remember seeing
Yes.
something in my feed about it, but it's going to be a problem, and
Yeah.
very few people are focused on this because they're like,
Yeah.
well, I want AI to make my presentation and then I can go to the beach for the afternoon. You know,
Yeah.
who cares if
Yeah.
the planet's going to be dead in 10 years because of all
Yeah.
this extra power consumption?
Yeah.
But there are
Yeah.
a few companies that are looking at sustainability and stuff, but
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. The overall, if the capacity building rate is so high that it's a sustainability is a challenge there. I
Mhm.
like the Finland has nice example for the Google has done a good job in Finland for the because it's cooler climate, so they need a lot less of cooling in the sense that it's more like in the sense windows open in the winter for the cooling
Right.
cooling of the of the
Yeah.
system, so much less power is spent on cooling the systems.
Yeah.
So I
We're
think one
moving
of
our
the
data center up to Lapland.
which in sense I would see Canada would have also a lot of potential for that in the sense that
Yeah,
the
same.
northern yeah
Yeah.
same thing for the cooler climate
Yeah. Yeah,
like
they're
less power.
basically the same. I like to say that
Yeah.
Finland and Canada are basically the same country, except Finland has better coffee and more natural food.
Ah, okay. Yes. Yeah.
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 It's too bad we don't have like a little high-speed tunnel that links directly. I might actually be in Finland in the fall, in September.
Ah,
I'm
okay.
supposed to go to Stockholm. So I just
Yes.
emailed everybody I knew in Finland and I said, I'm going to be in Stockholm in September and I need an excuse to go to Helsinki.
To go
So,
to Helsinki. Yeah. Okay. Oh, very good. Very, very
yep.
good. Hey, let me know when you're going. Connecting, maybe meet my colleagues of from Finland also.
Cool. Cool.
I think that would be fun.
All right. And that is a good wrap up. So tell people where they can find you if they've got questions for you, and where can they find out more about Howspace?
So howspace.com and how as the question of how and then
Mm.
space.com and can find me from there. Can find more questions and reach out from there.
Cool. And I do have one last question. How did the name come to
Yeah.
be? Howspace. Like how did the name
Oh,
come about?
yes.
Because it's
There's
an
a
interesting name.
because that was always it was the Simon Sinek say the why, how, what part of that, and that's always the house just how do you do that? How do you solving that puzzle that the content of the what or the why is a different, but then how to run the process, how to make that happen was always so that was space for the make the how happen.
Excellent. All right. Well,
Yes.
thanks very much for taking the time to chat today. And for everybody watching on YouTube or listening, show notes are going to have links to everything that we've chatted about. So thanks for joining.
Thank you. This has been fun.